Good morning. I'm going to be demonstrating our Honey Tables lab from Module 4, Chapter 6. The first thing you need to do before you touch a VM at all is read all of the instructions. This is usually important. Now it's really important. So you can start by scanning the Word document here. I can see right off the bat that I am going to need a Debian VM. Now, technically speaking, what I'm going to do is probably try this in Ubuntu and then do it in Debian. It also mentions a parrot-sec VM. Now, if you haven't actually built the parrot-sec VM because you haven't gotten to implementing OpenVAS, you could just as easily do this um, from uh, your Kali box or Nmap or anything that can ping, anything that can Nmap. And what you're going to want to do is to, of course, install Wireshark, install tcpdump. We're going to actually mostly use tcpdump, not Wireshark. Wireshark is the has the document, the other half of this document, which the one that is linked inside the inside the instructions, is this blog post here. Um, which okay, now that blog post right there, um, as in the one right down there. Yeah, down there. um, as it points out, tcpdump doesn't maintain TCP sessions in the same way that Wireshark does, because Wireshark is designed to do different things. It effectively, it is almost like Wireshark has a memory leak related to these network connections. Anyhow, so we're going to use tcpdump rather than Wireshark. If you've used Wireshark in some of your other classes and you want to try it with this as well, go for it. We're not going to be running this sort of thing for a very long time, for all that long. Now, that's the other thing you need to do before you start any of this, because you're about to do things which will render your system kind of useless on the network, and we do want to get it back. You have a couple of options. Either do the lab, take a snapshot, then do the lab, then revert from the snapshot. And that's probably the best thing to do, honestly. So you know how to do the lab. Alternatively, what you can do is, actually, no, you can't do that. I was about to say, take a snapshot at the beginning of the lab, take a snapshot at the end of the lab, and then roll back to the snapshot at the beginning. The thing about that is, it is not as if you can have branches of snapshots. So once you roll back to the pre-snapshot, the pre-lab outcome snapshot, the lab will have gone away again. So that really won't do you any good. The other thing you need, so read the instructions. Understand, the other thing to understand is that these instructions were written on the basis of the configuration of the person who did this, authored this lab initially. If your VM, your VMware, your hypervisor, is giving out a different address range, some of this is going to be different. Depending on the VM you choose to do this with, Debian versus Ubuntu or whatnot, even the nomenclature on the NIC itself could be different. So don't get locked into these specific instructions, at least in the early phases of this. Once we start talking about what kind of the structure of the TCP dump command, etc., you do have to be more specific. But be open to the possibility that you might be doing telling it to drop the output of ETH0 or ENP something or other 0 rather than ENS33. Just be flexible on that point. So what we're going to do essentially, let me move us over here again. So we're going to figure out our IP address, figure out our port name. These are things you can do. All this you can do with the IP address command. Various ways of doing it. You should be good and familiar with at least the rudiments of the IP address command now. You can also do these things with ifconfig or even with the hostname command, which I'll also demonstrate. Um, Now, you may get a very different list of things that that is doing. Say, for example, uh, if you're not in the 192.168.115 subnet, that's okay. That's actually this one here, this item 3 here, 192.168.115.255/32. That's a broadcast for your local subnet. If you're not in that local subnet, you'll never see that, but you might see a different broadcast for the subnet that you happen to be in. We've got some um, oh, we've got some multicast ranges here. If your VM is a member of any multicast groups, you'll see them. If not, you won't. 6. This is the global broadcast. 255, 255, 255, 255 with a mask of 255, 255, 255, 255, 255. Yeah, I think that's literally everybody, literally everywhere. Then we've got some IPv6 stuff, some IPv6 link local stuff, to be specific. And so whatever you discover in this in step 5D1, whether it's ARP or DNS or multicast or broadcast or IPv6 link local or whatnot, you're going to filter those things. Then you're going to ping again. You're going to keep doing this until nothing gets through. Your goal is basically to filter everything, but specifically. Now, the way to really filter this would be actually to issue an iptables input drop command. So in a sense, we're playing with some of the mechanics of a honey table, but we're not actually, we're kind of, let's see, we're kind of, what we're doing here is trying to create a baseline for the standard traffic, then ignore all of that. Ignore that, create your baseline, ignore your baseline, so that anything else that does come through is relevant and understood, is known to be important, shall we say. So now if you did an input drop rule, that would basically be, with an input drop and an output drop rule, you basically pulled your host off the network. With an output drop rule, you're hiding your host from the network. With a strict input drop rule but no output drop rule, you're kind of also doing the same thing, because of course every network connection is a conversation. You're almost creating a black hole for yourself on your network. The difference here is that by black holing, shall we say, everything you know should be happening, it will be much more easy to understand what is happening out of the usual, what shouldn't, shall we say, be happening. And then I'm going to briefly discuss some of the. Okay, so I'll come back in just a minute. I'll start discussing and demoing this. Thanks, and have a good day. Oh, and one more thing. In the process of reading the instructions, reading the blog post, the other thing you should read is your textbook. We're in chapter 6. The first few exercises concern tcpdump and the iptables command. So you can more or less start on page 174 and go all the way to 192. Now, the things they'll discuss in here in the book are not exactly what we'll be doing, but they should illuminate the concepts, and you'll probably see them on the quiz anyway. So make sure to read your book. If you're curious about iptables, there's also a section about firewall rules using iptables in the Linux Plus guide. I believe the network security chapter is chapter 13 or chapter 14. If you've got the old book, I believe it's chapter 13. And in the new book, it is actually it's chapter 14. Chapter 13 is network services and cloud and that sort of thing. So NFS, Samba, FTP, etc. The IP chains, IP tables discussion will be in the last chapter of the book, chapter 14. So thanks, and I'll be right back.